Last time, hopefully you remember, uh, we spoke about practice as being constant and complete, and how the self seeking after something or trying to run away from something, in a sense, just prolongs, continues the self-delusion that is the delusion of a self. And the point of practice is to let that seeking self go, for it to be undone. The difficulties along the path are not really there, but rather the places that we get stuck in our heads or in our bodies. I also spoke briefly about that, seeking after some kind of transcendent experience that we think will solve all our problems, and the dangers of that kind of practice. Likewise, the idea of just sitting there self-satisfied in your little bubble is another dangerous delusion, we might say. Also, sitting there in your dreams, in your delusions, in your hopes, in your expectations, in your memories. It's not that those things are bad in themselves, but the practice is so simple that we don't need that stuff. That's what makes the practice difficult or seem difficult. That's what really makes it frustrating, is getting tangled up in all of these other things. To put it bluntly, not practicing is what is hard, what is difficult. Practice itself is not even one thing. The practice, if it's correct, it's really not that difficult. So if you are stumbling over something, okay, see what you're doing wrong and correct it. That's where guidance can be so helpful. I also mentioned, what if there was no self that you needed to come back to? We maybe go somewhere in our meditation and then we come back to ourselves. What is that anyway? What is that little cocoon shell that we hide behind? And do we really need it? Or is that perhaps the cause of our suffering and distress? Isn't that what keeps us stuck? What if you didn't need some shell, some form you call yourself to come back to? As I mentioned, that may seem scary or frightening to the self stuck to itself, but it's actually freedom, complete freedom, even from itself. This is what is called awakening in Buddhism. The problem is, once we hear such a thing, we want to go towards it. We want to find out how to get there. Show me some quick and easy method. How do I do it? And of course, that's just the ego masturbating, isn't it? Show me a way that I can get there. Get where? You can't get there. You can only come from there. To go toward it is already to separate yourself from it. This is basically what I tried to cover last time, but I'm afraid it was rather lacking in practical application. So there were some very helpful questions as we went through and everyone introduced themselves. I will try now, with the time left, to bring it home, really to bring it close to home. Okay? So naturally, we begin with the body. We all have a body and a mind, and that's all you need. But you need to learn how to use your body in a way that helps the practice, that supports the practice, rather than makes it more difficult. So for example, for me, the best position is like this, to sit in what's called full lotus. It's very good to open the hips, the back is naturally straight. It's pretty much a perfect posture for what we are doing, which is pouring all of ourselves into what is right here, concentrating, focusing our mind. This isn't just some kind of a weird wrap yourselves up like a German pretzel thing. It actually works very well. It works very well. It's a very good way, if you can do it, to apply yourselves physically. The way we have our eyes, not looking around, but not closed either, because then you tend to drift into a world of dreams and so on. So the eyes are said to be just half closed, naturally looking down in front of you. If you were not looking at or for anything, that's what your eyes would naturally do. Look at someone in prayer in a church, it's the same thing. The eyes are naturally directed down, in a sense inward, but not in the sense of going into your thoughts and ideas. No, you're not going out, you're not really going in either. You're just totally focused right there. So everything we do with the body is helping to support that practice, the way we have our hands. The physical stuff, I trust Cyrus has gone through, and there are Zazen manuals and so on that can help you with this. Needless to say, the more difficult part is what to do with the mind. What to do with the mind. The body and the mind are not separate things. So if the body is correct, it's much easier than to apply yourself, to let all of your energy be concentrated and focused. On what? On what? You've all heard about these Zen koans, or people who supposedly just sit there and just sit, just to sit through. Well, there are many ways to do it, but the point is simply to bring all of the energy that you have. You all have enough energy to do the work, but it's scattered. So the beginning of Zazen is simply to bring that energy that you have all into one. The focus is naturally not in the head, where you'll go off into ideas and so on, but rather letting the breath naturally take your attention, your focus down. They say below the belly, the navel or the belly button is here, a little bit below there, basically the physical center of your body. In Japanese, they often speak of the hada. You don't want to get stuck there either, but to get out of your head and all of the stuff that's going on there, we get our body correct. And again, everyone has to do that for themselves. Everybody has a different body, but you get the body relaxed but alert. Then the mind focused and concentrated. The best way is simply through the breath. You see, not some idea, metaphysical, philosophical, religious principle, or even a so-called koan. No, the breath. Does anybody here not have a breath? Huh? You're dead if you don't have one, you see? You've already got it. Not the thought of the breath, not thinking about it, but the physical breath, you see? Don't go into your head and all the ideas about it. Actually return to what is always already here, or you'd be dead. You see, you've already got it. Return. The problem is we're not with our breath. We're off in our head somewhere. And so we have this really shallow breath and physical problems that come as a result of that. So we are bringing our attention first and foremost, our attention, our focus, our concentration, where? On the breath. Not the idea, not the thought of the breath, but the breath itself, to exaggerate. No before, no after, no better, no worse, no illusion, no enlightenment, just the breath, breathing itself, giving all of our attention right there. Then you can see what's called a sense of joy, a calm joy that arises and helps you in your practice. If you find your mind wandering, no problem. The breath is still there, isn't it? Simply bring it back. It's not bad or evil if your mind wanders, it's just a waste of energy. So bring it back to the breath. Once that is stable and steady, then you can really see into the core. For example, traditionally in Zen, many people came to it with a question such as, when I was born, where did I come from? And when I die, where will I go? I don't know. But the real point is, you don't know where you are right now. You do and you don't. Your mind is split. So once you see that clearly, this can be a natural motivation to give yourself to the practice, to naturally, through the breath, gather all of your attention into one. And just be one. Again, not the idea, just to be one. Please don't think of this as some bizarre mystical thing. You do it all the time. Whenever you do something you love, whenever you do something, you become one with it, don't you? When you listen to music or perform it or have a very nice talk with a friend, that separation disappears, doesn't it? Yeah, it's completely natural because there is no self. But then we come back. Well, as I said, what if there's no self you need to come back to? So again, it's not as mystical or esoteric as it may sound, not at all. It's actually something we are constantly touching and moving away from. Well, what if you stop moving away from? That's what the practice is really about. Keep it close to home. As it said in Zen, why do you go off seeking treasure elsewhere and forget about the precious treasure you have in your own home? This is a typical Chinese way of expressing it. Don't forget the treasure that you have in your own home, but to really come home to that and know it for yourself from the inside. If you are practicing properly, I assure you, you can't miss it. You can't miss it. Take some time and some patience, but you already have a wonderful Sangha. So I trust you will continue making good use of it. And if you find this Zen meditation, Zazen, helpful, please continue it, not just as a hobby, but as something that, as I said, comes to be constant, natural, and complete. Then it can be naturally let go. It's been about 15 minutes, so I'd like to leave room so that everyone can speak before we end. And if you have any questions, something is not clear, please feel free to ask for the benefit of all, and I will try my best to respond. Thank you for listening.